Here we go. Patzer's Playground, episode 19. Okay, so we got a 4 knights. Okay, standard tactic. Okay, so how should white capture this? This is a simple one, or maybe not so simple. So which way? Do we capture this way, or do we capture this way? Every Russian schoolboy knows that you capture away from the center. Oops. Capture away from the center, obviously. Okay, so why? 2 reasons. 1, you gotta open up this bishop. 2, you gotta control this square. So, in this case, you definitely want to capture with the d-pawn. B-pawn is very anti-positional, and you'll see why. You'll see why. But it's important to control d5, and it's important to develop the bishop. Also less pawn islands, it's true. It keeps your structure safer. Because after this way, now black can actually get a serious advantage. Black can actually get a serious advantage with e4. So notice that if rook e1, this doesn't change anything because you can't take this because of a fork. But the idea is after e4, so again, you can interpose rook e1, bishop e7, but knight d4, knight d4, d5, bishop e3, and bishop d6. White is just much worse here. These bishops are not as good as these bishops, and these central pawns are doing a nice job in restricting space. And black has already made kingside attack. You know, he can castle, play f5, f4 if he wants. This pawn could be a target potentially. Notice the bishop takes d5, you can play bishop takes h2, so it's just not good. Okay, so white took with the b pawn. Black played d5, which is a good move as well. Bishop e3, bishop e7, h3, castle. Okay, so I mean black should be better here, right? Black has a central control. His pieces are developed on natural squares. White's pieces are a bit odd. So black is definitely for choice here. e1, e4, knight d4. Okay, so black's been doing great so far. Now, question. Should we do something about this potential exchange? And if so, what? So we have some options. We can just let it sit there and just make a move. We can capture the knight. We can move the knight to a different square. What should be done? What should be done? Okay, so this is actually interesting, and you know, it's kind of minor, the differences, but okay, let's just talk about very general terms. Who has more space here, white or black? Okay, so it's pretty obvious it's black. Okay, who do trades favor? The side with more space or the side with less space? In general. Yeah, so in general, trades favor the side with less space. So in general, this offer is probably something that black wants to avoid. And I think in this case too, it's probably something black wants to avoid. So notice that there's a difference between trading these guys and trading these guys. So the difference is you're creating some sort of imbalance here. You're giving yourself the two bishops. So it's not so much of a trade as it is a creation of an imbalance. Whereas if you trade knight for knight, you're simply, easing white's play a bit. So even though you're still trading pieces of equal material, you're giving yourself something to play with. So you're kind of like trading in your space advantage in a way for an advantage of having two bishops. So I personally would probably play a move like knight a5, as LC mentioned. So the idea is, say, a3, c5, knight e2, take, and bishop f5. And okay, I think black's doing quite well here because d3 is hard to achieve. We have two guys on it. This bishop is quite bad at the moment. It's not entirely clear how it's going to get better quickly. And our space advantage is actually somehow more pronounced here than it was, say, 2 moves ago. But notice how we fixed white's pawns and everything. So we gave him some advantage in a way as well. But I think this position looks very comfortable for black. Do you guys agree? I mean, you guys would prefer to play black here, right? I'd imagine. So it's a possible way to play. Okay. Black played knight e5, which I can't entirely fault him for. It makes a lot of sense. He's bringing his knight to the center, but it's not doing something concrete. Because if you notice, this knight actually doesn't have too many useful squares. Like, it looks pretty, but looks can be deceiving, right? Because like these squares are defended, and he can't really go back. So be wary of putting your knight on a square that looks attractive but actually doesn't accomplish much. So it has good scope but not good influence. And notice there's always like potential tricks of like f4 and you not be able to take en passant because of the pin. Whoops, of the pin. It's a lot of arrows, but the knight's on an unprotected square, so there's tactics involved. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it allows c5, but so does knight a5, right? So you'll see it's happening in a second, so you'll see. Okay, so d3, c5, strong move. And now notice this bishop is suddenly running very short in squares. So how do we take advantage of that? So yeah. How do we take advantage? So simply c4 and a6, and the bishop actually runs out of squares. b5 is coming. So c4, take, take, take. Okay, so white decides to exchange queens first. How should black recapture? Well, rook takes seems natural, right? Bring your rook to the open file. Yeah. Yeah, but black took with the bishop. A little odd. Rook is definitely preferred, but this is fine too. Okay, and now after bishop a4, a6, and now the bishop is actually trapped. b5 wins the bishop, and there's really nothing that white can do. So white tries to create a trick or two. Bishop f4. But after knight g6, bishop d6, bishop e7, the bishop is still completely trapped. So take, take, rook b1, b5. Okay. So black's just winning. Black's just winning. Take, 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 take. Knight d4, f5. Okay, so just up a clean piece. White doesn't even have a single pawn for it. So this should be fairly routine. But of course, we are on the playground, so nothing is ever as routine as it seems. Okay, rook c5, bishop a6, this looks natural. Rook b1, rook c8, trying to trade, again, completely natural. White declines. Knight c6, again, offering a trade, completely natural. Take, take, okay, this white has simplified the position for black. This looks even easier. This should be pretty straightforward. Okay, rook takes f5, rook takes c2. Notice that if rook b8, we have simply rook c8. No worries.
Check.
Okay. So what should black do in this position? What should black do? Well, black only has 2 legal moves, so you guys have a 50-50 chance here. You guys have a 50-50 chance. Alright, well, I have to admit I tricked you guys, because I said rook c8 was the right move, but it's actually not. Because that's what black did. The correct move is actually bishop c8. So the point is that eventually this rook is going to have to do something useful. If it doesn't, of course, we just take on c3 and play rook a3 and c3, c2, c1. So eventually this rook is going to have to move and try to do something. But say after rook a5, so now white has a threat of playing this rook a8. And now we simply play king f7 and we unpin. And it's going to be hard for white to generate any sort of counterplay, because we're simply threatening to take this pawn. If he plays rook a3, then his rooks become too passive. We just play bishop e6, and it's pretty simple. Okay, rook c8 also is fine, but it gets trickier. It gets trickier because, unfortunately, this guy has no squares now, if you notice. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, black is still winning, but notice how he kind of trapped his own bishop. So he's going to have to do some fancy footwork to get out of this. Okay, so rook b6, rook a2, fine, rook e5. Okay, so what should black do here? Yeah, so in this position, this rook is actually doing great work defending the 8th rank from potential shenanigans that white could, do. Like white maybe has some sort of idea to play rook e7 and rook b8 and try to mate. So keeping this rook on the back row makes sense, but we also want to open up a square for this bishop. So we can kind of do both in one fell swoop by playing rook f8, exactly what Bebop said. So the idea is we're hitting this guy, we're giving this bishop a square, and we're also staying on the back rank. So we are indeed defending the isle. We are indeed defending the isle. So this bishop has a window seat now. We kind of want him to get him an aisle seat. But unfortunately, black played rook c7. And now he's actually losing his bishop by force, right? Rook e8 and rook a8. Okay, but black's actually still better, fortunately. So for example, rook e8,
check.
King f7, rook a8, check to get the king further away. And now rook a takes a6, rook takes c3, rook c6, rook takes c6, rook takes c6. Okay, black's like a pawn and an ending. And probably still for choice. Probably still for choice. Although, with proper play, it should probably be a draw, but I mean, definitely black can try to win this. Okay, but instead, white played rook takes c4. So white chose not to win the bishop by force and simply went pawn grabbing. Okay, so black has a chance to save himself. How should he do it? So the move here is the natural bishop to b7. So the point of bishop b7 is that we're blocking this rook from potentially coming down to the 8th rank. And then we also say like rook e3, for example, just rook d7, rook b5, h6, and black's just fine. Okay, I mean, he's down a pawn, but I mean, rook d3 eventually is going to win this pawn. So, and now this bishop is great. So maybe we play like bishop d5 to f7, then we play rook d3. I mean, it's looking good for black. Okay, but he played rook a3, and now again white can win the bishop by force. He can play rook e8 and rook a8 and win the bishop. So again, by having played this move rook c7, black weakened his back rank. Okay, rook e6. Not sure why he did that. Bishop c8, rook e3, king f7, rook d6. Okay, so his bishop's at least out. Rook d7, rook c6, bishop a6. Not sure why he locked in his bishop again, bishop b7. I guess he wants to defend this pawn, but... Okay, but now he should just play bishop b7 with the trick that if the rooks are defending each other, so there's no time for rook takes c4. So bishop b7, rook b6, rook takes c3, rook e1, rook b3 is basically game over. Just gonna play this. So, I mean, actually, he actually has to take, right? Because the rook is trapped otherwise. So he has to take, and this is completely over, right? Just play b2, bishop b4, curtains. Okay, but unfortunately, black forgot to count to 2. 2 is greater than 1. And so played rook a5, and now it just goes downhill. Rook takes a6. Okay. So, after all that work of trying to keep the bishop on, he just hangs it. Probably due to some time pressure, but all hope is not lost, because it's still a rook ending, and as we all know, all rook endings are drawn. Okay, what is black's best move here? It's a little tricky, but... And most of the moves are actually about the same, but there's a little bit trickier move than the rest. Rook a3. Rook a3 is tricky. Rook a1 is tricky. But you guys are just making moves to be tricky for the sake of being tricky. You want to be tricky and do something with it. So Barus has the absolute right idea. So the right move actually is rook d3. So obviously you're not hanging your rook on a5, because if you take on a5, I take on e6, and again I'm going to win this pawn. So something like rook d3, rook a5, king e6, and now you're winning this pawn, and this should be a draw. This should be a draw. But the idea is that we can win this pawn before white can attack this one. And because white's rooks are defending each other, this rook is actually not even hanging. So rook d3 is most accurate.
Check.
Black tried to be clever with rook a1, but of course white just ignored it. Although white probably should have taken and then played rook a4. Notice that now white is first. And now if king d5, rook e7, sorry, king f1. And now notice this rook has to stay on the 7th rank, because now this king is too far away, and so this rook will come to 7th rank if black doesn't keep the 7th rank. So rook e7, g3, g6, and here white's actually a little bit better because this rook is forced to stay on the 7th rank, this king is forced to stay on this pawn. And so eventually white can maybe make progress this way. Okay. But instead he played king h2, take, rook d3, okay. Okay, so now this should actually be a draw. Because this rook will just stay here the whole game. And this rook will have to stay here the whole game. And black can just move his king back and forth, and it's hard to see how white makes progress. Because if white king goes too far this way, these pawns start to fall. And notice how the white king can't even cross this rank. So if black just leaves his rook here forever, white can't do anything. Like if black just goes like this forever, king g6, king f7, it's hard for white to make progress. Okay, so king f6. And now simply just move back and forth. But black tried to be active. But now all of a sudden the problem is that white can sacrifice this pawn to get these two. So after king g3, g5, now all of a sudden all these pawns are falling.
Check.
Okay, so now he should probably take on c3, and then take on g5, rook d3, f4, king e6, rook e5,
check.
King d6, rook e1, king d5, and okay, maybe some chances to draw because this pawn is far advanced. Although it's difficult. But after h5, now all of a sudden you're just losing all your pawns. King takes h5 just wins. Okay, I don't know why he didn't do that. But now rook c3 just equal. So what did black play? Well, he took on c3. Okay, so dead draw again. Rook c5. Okay, so now h4 is the simplest way to draw.
Check.
h4, king g4, rook c2, g3, rook g2, rook c6, king e5, rook takes e4, and rook takes g3.
Check.
Is a draw? Is a draw. But black picnics and plays king e6, and now white's dead one. And then he loses the second pawn, and he's about to lose his third pawn right about now. And now black resigns. So black played the first 25 moves really well. Really well. And then after that, it got progressively worse. Progressively worse. So it wasn't so much an endgame issue as it was just kind of a general collapse issue. But hopefully black learned something from that game. Okay, we'll do one more. We'll do that one more. And you would call it consistency, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Okay, so here we go. Again from the black side. Okay, so we got Sicilian. Okay, so let's talk about this first. Okay, so obviously in this position, the correct move is to take on d4. Because if you don't, well, you'll see what happens. Black played knight c6, and the problem is, how does white basically ensure himself a great advantage? The problem is white can simply play d5 here, and this knight has to go someplace really awkward, either here or here. And black's not doing well at all. So this is why you have to take this pawn on d4. It's a very Sicilian type move. You exchange a wing pawn for a center pawn, but black didn't do that. Okay, bishop e5. Okay, so white didn't take advantage. So how does black to play kind of save himself? Or what's the best way for black to play to save himself? C takes D is good, but it's not best. It's not best. So the best move is actually queen b6. The point is, it's a fork. We're forking this pawn because 3 is greater than 2, and we're forking this bishop. So white is forced to take. And now after pawn takes, now black is fine. The reason why queen b6 is slightly more accurate is because we force white to make an exchange he doesn't really want to make. Notice that these double pawns are actually not weak, and how we're still going to maintain 2 center pawns after an eventual pawn takes pawn. Notice that if c3, bishop a6 is killer, because now you're never going to be able to castle. So, queen b6 is accurate. cd is also fine though. It just transposes into something else. Okay, so black played a6, take. And now, again, we have the same age-old question, which way? Which way do we take? Which way do we take? Which way do we take? He went that way. BC, BC, BC. No votes for DC? Higgs votes DC. Higgs is usually right. Higgs is usually correct. But it's 4-1. Okay, IQ also thinks DC. Higgs is wrong. IQ is wrong? Well, usually IQ is right. Usually IQ is right. So it turns out that Higgs and IQ are still right. Still right. DC is best. DC is best. Because after BC, your pawns are uglier. Notice you have this guy, and you're not really helping this bishop at all. So DC is correct, but of course, black played BC. Looks aren't everything. Well, in chess, they're most things. Okay, so knight c3, d5, e5. Okay, so this kind of helps black a little bit. Probably should have just castled right away. And then tried to open it up rather than close it up, because notice the development. Black has precisely 0 pieces developed. White has 2. 2 is greater than 0. Okay, rook b8 makes some sense. Knight a4 makes some sense.
Check.
Queen a5 makes some sense. Knight c3. Okay, so white suddenly has just given tempi on plates. So black has graciously accepted the tempi that have been given to him on the plates. And now what should black do? We should order up some more plates of tempi. The way to do that would be to simply take. And then after either knight takes or queen takes, you play c5, and black's doing quite well. Considering how he was almost lost like 6 moves ago. And also this helps to get this bishop out, because after bishop e7 we can play d4, and then this bishop gets monster diagonal. Monster diagonal. So that would have been good. But he played instead knight e7, which is okay. Then knight f5, which is okay. Still hitting d4, not a bad idea. Okay, rook b1. Take, good. Take. Okay, so again, black should probably play take and c5 and bishop e7 and d4. And again, monster diagonal. Okay, multi-kill. Okay, so knight d4, but he didn't, he played queen c5. Okay, so queen c5 is kind of an awkward move because the queen is actually well posted on a5, and you're just encouraging white to ruin your pawn structure. So definitely he should have captured first. Okay, but after queen c5, knight f5, ef5, okay, now all of a sudden your pawn structure is compromised for no reason. And your queen is also going to lose time on this square, right? Because like bishop e3 is coming. So queen c5 is an awkward move. Okay, bishop e3, like I said. Queen c4. Now this queen is starting to make some awkward choices. You say black never castles. Well, we'll find out. Rook e1. Okay, so what should black do here? Going on Higgs's point of trying to castle, what should black do? Well, black should probably develop his bishop with an eye on castling. So bishop e7 or bishop e4 with an eye to castle next move makes a lot of sense. But white plays bishop e6, or sorry, black plays bishop e6, which is the wrong bishop. He should want to develop the dark square bishop to castle. I don't understand why you guys have a fascination with developing your queenside pieces when you gotta castle. You gotta castle. Okay, 92. So all of a sudden, this queen is running a bit short on squares, right? So for example, if white plays the move b3, this queen really only has one square to go to. This square is probably not a square you'd want to go to. Yeah, this queen's kind of like a big pawn. Okay, so probably black's best move is actually placing like this. The idea is just to give his queen this square to go to. But unfortunately, in this position, black plays rook d8. Because I'm not sure why rook d8. Like, you're taking your rook off of a good file and putting it on a bad file. And you're wasting more time when you need to be developing. So I don't really know what black's doing here. Queen e4 doesn't threaten anything. It's just another waste of time. Okay, b3, now queen b4, c3, queen e4. Okay, so this is suicidal. So how does white win by force here? How does white win by force? This is a chesstempo.com position. Bishop f4. I'm not even sure what that does. Knight f4. Not even sure what that does. I don't know what any of these moves do. f4. That just hangs a bishop. Knight f4. Nope. Nope. Blocks the queen. Yeah, but you have something better. So simply bishop g5 is the winning move. So the point is you have a threat. What's your threat, guys? What is the threat of bishop g5? Threat. Win exchange. True. But that's not my real threat. My real threat is knight f4 winning your queen. That's my real threat. So 99% of people would play something like bishop e7, and then I play knight f4 and you resign. So that's actually a great move to play in blitz, bishop g5, because, you know, everyone would just defend it, but you win your queen. Okay, so bishop g5 just wins because you have to play a move like queen g4, and then I just take on d8, and that's game. Okay, but white played knight g3. Okay, so he's giving us an out. So you're saying there's a chance. Where should the queen go now? Not many choices, but where should the queen go now? Okay, well, it should go to h4. Yeah, so now you're threatening f4 potentially. And the queen is actually quite safe here because it can get back this way. But of course, black plays another suicidal move, takes on e5. Okay, now this just loses material to either of bishop g5 or bishop b6. In both cases, winning the exchange. So queen takes e5 was not on the cards. White side win the exchange this way. Okay. And, okay, materially black does have two pawns for the exchange, but he's hopelessly lost here because his king is in the center and his pieces are not good. In particular, this e6 guy is a big pawn, and this bishop's undeveloped, and this rook is not in the game. So there's no chance black can survive this. Rook c1 was good, queen b4, rook c6 is good. Bishop e7. And now, do you guys see how white can finish the game elegantly? This is very elegant. I'm giving you a clue by saying it's possible, but see if you guys can see it. Okay, so what's the full line, Higgs? That doesn't win material right off the bat. Yeah, Higgs. Better double check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because losing pieces is bad for your health. So what's the line? I mean, I'll give you a hint, you're right, but what's the line? So as an exercise, the rest of you guys, knight takes f5, bishop takes f5, queen takes d5 is correct. But what's the follow-up? Okay, so the answer is knight f5, bishop f5, queen d5, check. Okay, so bishop d7 is forced, right? Anything else is just losing. Okay, so rook d1, hitting the bishop. Queen b7, defending the bishop only way. And now, the winning idea is queen a5 check.
Check.
And rook c7. And now it's over. It's over! So you win your piece back with interest because you get some rooks on the 7th. And notice that it's illegal to castle because his king moved twice already. So black is toast. Toast. Alright. Well, white of course missed this and played queen e2, king d7. And now, white to move and win? Well, this one's simpler, simply rook takes e6. And queen takes e6
Check.
win. Because knight takes f5 and this bishop is going to be very sad. But white played rook e6, bishop d6, rook c1. Okay, white's completely winning. Completely winning. Rook
Check.
c8, rook a7, rook c7, take. Knight h5, completely winning. Black probably can resign soon. Queen h4. So obviously this is a threat, but simply defend against it.
Check.
Oops. Oops. And black one. And black one. So, moral of the story is never resign. Never resign. Yep. Kings in the tarp.
Checkmate.
Kings in the tarp. Okay, that's episode 19. Hope you enjoyed.